Hey, bubbling, coming in, crushing this art. You already know. So I wanted to come in and talk a little bit about how broad mathematics kind of lends itself to finding a zodiacal placement. And so we can get a little more in-depth look into what a number would mean, say, as a planet in the zodiac, and why does mathematics sort of allow us to view something similar, right? So the first thing that I want to start off just referencing is like the dials of mathematics. So we know that there are certain patterns that constantly repeat themselves in math. So this is why if we add numbers together, we'll find out where they are on the dial of 9, right? And it will just keep going through, right? Endlessly. So it's like 10, it will go back to 1 on the dial of 9, right? And same with 19, right? And 28 and so on and so forth, right? We'll always be able to reference this just by adding numbers together, right? We'll also see another thing. Is a number odd or even, right? And we'll see that by its place by 10, right? So for example, we'll always see too the tens place of a number. This helps us place and visualize what a number is, right? So a number is always going to be ending with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 0, right? 9 or 0, right? And so there's 10 things that can end, but we're never going to add a number together and see 0, right? This is why we know that when we're adding numbers together, we're referencing the dial of 9, because they will always just go through this cyclically. But we can't really see odd or even too well, right, when we add a number together, because now this is an odd number. It won't tell us if it's odd or even because, see, there's an extra odd, right? So all of a sudden, like I said in a previous video, it'd be patriarchal almost, right? It'd be like masculine. So before you add a number together, you want to see if it's masculine or feminine, right? So now that we got that out of the way, right, and we realize now that these sort of dials, right, of like 1, 2, 3, 4, jumping back and forth, right, of odd and even, and then also like the modalities of 9, which I broke down in a previous video, we start to see that there are these dials that are building, right, and they sort of allow us to come to zodiacal placing, which is very interesting. So I have this shown here because I think it's very interesting and it will show us something. Is if we go by 3, right, which would be modality, by 4, which would be element, which would give us a sign, by 5, which would give us basic energies, right? And then once we see if it's yin or yang by 8, we'll see which of those it'll be, because by 5, right, starting with fire, we could have Mars, right, the feminine, or Pluto, the masculine. And this is just my opinion, right? It's just to understand that this is complete spiritual control, right? And there is the masculine and the feminine, right, where that's working through you and you have control over that, right? So as I go through these planetary placements, if you have a sort of issue, then always just go back to what I'm referencing, right? And then get your own understanding of the energy, right? But either way, this is how I see it, right? So then we have the air, right, which would be 2 and 7, right? Because we had 1 and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It would go through the 5 twice, right? 5 is even. So what would happen is we have the masculine feminine of 1, right? Masculine 1, which would be Pluto. Feminine 6 would be Mars, right? Then we have the masculine and feminine of the air, right? So either way, I broke that down in a previous video, but what I want to bring up is now if we go 3, 4, 5, right, the next number would be 6, right? But that's just 2 times 3, so we already have that represented in the element and the modality, because 4 is 2 times 2, right? So the element and the mode, the sign, will tell us more information than 6 would. So this is why 6 isn't present. And then we'd see the next number would be 7, right? And then 8, right? And this would be like the traditional number of planets, right? 7. So these would be 2 ways of getting a planetary placement, just slightly different, right? Utilizing different schemes, right? And then, we'd have 8. So the thing about it though is then once we wrap around and we get to 9, we would start doubling these numbers, right? So we would have 9, and then we'd have 16, 25. And the thing that's just so interesting is now once we get to 9, it would start telling us about the alignment, right? So once we get to 9, we sort of see everything we need to know about the zodiacal placement, right? And yeah, I just think that's very interesting because it just starts off, right, as 3, 4, 5, right? And we need the yin and yang to that. And we also have 7, which we can utilize. But then after we get past that point, it's basically just going to repeat the same thing in a higher in a higher realm like way, because we have the placement, which is going to tell us the most individual characteristic, right? Is the number odd or even? Is it yang or yin? But that's not too much information, right? So then it starts to differentiate in all the different ways that yin expresses itself, right? And all the even numbers and all the odd numbers, right, for yang expressing itself. Whereas we start to see then that all numbers will sort of go back to their root placement of what planetary association they have and what sign association they have, right? And then they will also start to filter through and aspect other elements. So like, for example, if I was to break down like 202, right? So 202, we can always find the modality by adding it together, right? So 2 plus 2 is 4. And this modality is by 3, right? So 2 plus 2 is 4, and this would be 1 on the dial of 3, so we'd have cardinal, right? Now 202 is water because 100 is elemental. It's divisible by 4, it's squared. So once we get to 100, we start over again. So we could just go fire 1, water 2, and we know 202 is water, right? So now we have Cancer, right? We're now on the dial of 5, right? We have 2, right? Because we can see this just by the placement. It's 202, right? So now we go 1, 2, and we know it's associated with air. And then by 8, if we figure out what it is remainder of 8, 200 is divisible by 8, so this would leave us with 2. And this is within the first 4 parts of 8, so it's on the yang side. So this would now tell us that the air that we got isn't Uranus, right? It's not allowing expression to come through and channel, right? It's more Mercury, the ability to utilize expression, right? And ability, right? So say now we could see that 202's placement, right, is Mercury in Cancer, right? Where then when we start to go a little bit further, and if we say what it is by 9, right? Now we know that by 9, we added it together when we got 4, right? So this would actually be in the fixed realm, because now what we have is the cardinal realm set up, right? Because now that it's 9, there'd be 3 in each realm, because we already saw what it was in 3, right? And now that we know it's cardinal, right? But it's the beginning of the second realm, 4, 5, and 6. So now this would start to aspect a fixed sign, right? And what, 16 would go to 160 plus 32 would be 192. 192. So yeah, and then 193, 194, 195, 196, 197, 198, 199, 200, 201, 202. So this would be air, right? So we have fixed air. So now we know that this would aspect Aquarius, right? So now we know that on a broader level, right? Because the placement is always most important, right? But on a broader level, 202 would be Mercury in Cancer, right? But aspecting Aquarius, which would be what? An 8th house energy, right? So this would be going out into the dark, exploring knowledge, right? Or sort of hidden knowledge, right? When it comes down to able to utilize or having a functional home, right? Yeah, so that's just interesting, is now we can start to see how they add up. So I guess the point that I just want to bring up is just the basic numbers, right? 3, 4, and 5, right? And then finding the second half of 4. So it would almost be 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Because it would just be 4 times 2. So once we get there, though, we can start to see a whole zodiacal placement. And then when we start to go further out, right, instead of going 3, 4, 5, right, we double that, right, and we go 9, 16, 25, we can see broader aspects, right? So that's interesting. And yeah, I just want to bring up how it fits into math, because it's just like, yeah, literally going 2, 3, 4, 5, right? and then taking that as far as you can go and realizing 9 now breaks down into 3 again, right? So now we start aspects, and there's like literally that zodiacal sign, right, and planetary alignment, we can almost just really easily find and is natural to the system of numbers, so that we use. So I just think that that's really awesome. I just want to bring that up. So yeah, if you have any number broken down, if you want any number broken down, I'm gonna keep at this so we can just see, right, and you can know and you can ask questions on how to break numbers down yourself. But I want to offer stuff to you, just to give in-depth looks on numbers, you know, because I'm just a math nerd. No, not everybody wants to study numbers, but hey, bubbling, Citra, beach.